My next guest, he is a professional mixed martial artist with a record of 19 wins with 7 losses. Please welcome onto the show, Kurt Holobaugh. Did I say that right?
You said it right.
Perfect. How you doing, Kurt?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome, man. Well, Kurt, man, thank you for taking the time, man. I know it's a beautiful morning here. I appreciate you taking the time. Letting you know, I just turned 30 today, man. So you're my very first interview in my 30s.
Happy birthday.
Hey, appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. How's life been for you?
It's been good. It's been good, man. I feel like me and my family, we live a good life. Live a happy life. I mean, we're a jujitsu family. We own a gym and we train jujitsu and martial arts every day. So it's always a good time.
Nice. So you're a gym owner.
Yep.
Awesome. And where's this at?
So I have two locations. Part of my team that's in Amite, Louisiana, and Franklinton, Louisiana.
Okay, awesome, man. So and how's the business life running? Because obviously running a business can be stressful.
Man, it is. It's stressful. Me and my wife, she gives me a lot of help. I think we do a very good job, bouncing back and forth with both locations. And then I got a handful of instructors and helpers that always show up and help me out. So, those guys make it a little bit easier.
So running a gym and then being a fighter, right? A professional fighter. How important is balance and scheduling and making sure you're staying on schedule in your life, Kurt?
It's very important, and I actually like, you know, owning a gym and so much more comes with that, because we got so many guys that fight out of the gym. I got so many guys that I coach, and every weekend I got to travel somewhere
Oh,
and coach somebody, whether it's my kids competing in a jiu-jitsu competition in Biloxi or New Orleans, or whether it's an MMA show in Texas or Alabama. I'm normally getting around every weekend traveling, but it's still, I got to find time to balance a normal life too. I like to cook, I like to barbecue, I like to grill, whatever, hang out at the house. I got to get my grass cut sometime. So, there's times where I find to do that and balance everything out.
you a sports fan?
I am
Who's
big
your
sports
who's
fan.
your team?
So in
Even
football,
team.
of course, I'm a fan of New Orleans Saints. Being from Louisiana, Saints, the Pelicans. We don't really have a hockey team, and of course, I'm not the biggest college fan, but I'm always trying to watch a little bit and pull for LSU.
Absolutely, man. The Saints with Derek Carr, an interesting one.
It is interesting, man. I'm excited to see it. I think he's gonna bring I think he's gonna bring something well to us, something good to the Saints, and I mean, we have weapons, we have tools with the Saints. We just got to see if it works out for us.
Yeah, I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm a bigger believer in Derek Carr than a lot of people. I
Yeah,
think they
for
can
sure.
win the division. I'm not a fan of the coach. I'm just throwing it out there, but we'll see.
That's what we're kind of lacking. I think Dennis Allen just kind of was there, and the Saints didn't have to go search and look. It was a guy saying, "Hey, I'll step up, take over." But he's definitely no Sean Payton.
Pulling for Dennis though. We're all pulling
Yeah,
for Dennis here. Yeah, interesting year for the Saints. I think they can win the division this year.
yeah, I think so, man. It's going to be a good year for us. I'm excited about it. Football season's one of my favorite times of the year, and love Sundays.
Did you catch the Lakers getting swept?
I did. I did. I actually got a good friend that's actually up in Colorado, and he's a Nuggets fan too, but he's a LeBron fan. So I was asking him last night. I'm like, so man, who you got? You gonna go with the Nuggets for the sweep? And he's like, man, I kind of hope not. I want LeBron to get a little something. And I actually thought the Lakers would pull that one off. I thought they still lose the series, but I figured they had to pull last night off. But man, hey,
That's the
happens.
game. That's the game, man. Speaking of the game, man, so you're a professional fighter, man. You've done this for over a decade when it comes to, since your pro debut, I believe, in 2011, right?
Yep.
So you've taken a lot, you've had a lot of experience out there. You've been in this field. What brought you to the world of MMA for you, Kurt?
Oh, just being a fan of fighting in general. This back when I first started watching, like fighting movies and martial arts movies,
Yeah.
whether it's a Power Rangers show or, Chuck Norris or Steven Seagal, Jean-Claude Van Damme movies. Just a fight fan, man. If it had anything to do with fighting, I was watching it. And then I slowly got into boxing a little bit back in the Mike Tyson era. And then once the UFC came out, fell in love with the UFC and one day started training and figured, maybe one day I want to fight. started fighting, and then led to all of everything that's happened.
So for you, what was the moment? Because I think I see this a lot. Maybe you're not like other people, right? But I see this a lot where people they see something they're interested in and they're scared to try it. Well, what gave you that push? Because people say, "Hey, I'm going to do this," and it sometimes we do need that push out there. Did you ever need that push, or is it something you just woke up and said, "I'm going to do it," and you did it, and that's it?
Oh,
There's no
it was,
convincing.
it was something I always wanted to do,
Okay.
but at that time there wasn't like gyms out there like there is now. I feel like you can go to any city and there's a jujitsu gym,
Yeah.
martial arts gym, something. The sport's grown so much in, let's
Yeah.
say, the last 12 years that there's mixed martial arts gyms everywhere. Well, back when I was a kid, my mom even put me in karate. Just karate's a little bit different, so
Yeah.
it really wasn't for me. So I quit karate when I was like 7 or 8, and but still love to watch everything that had to do with fighting. And I always said, I want to be a boxer. Anytime I seen a punching bag hanging at somebody's house, I was fascinated. If I seen a speed bag hanging at somebody's house, I was fascinated. I'm like, I just wanted to hit it. And you know, once I seen a gym in my town opening, it was a Gracie Baja Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I'm like, yep. I'm gonna, as soon as they open, I'm going, and I'm just gonna try it out. And man, I walked in and never left.
Awesome, man. And then so from that point on, you're a fighter, you're a professional fighter. How was your first professional fight experience for you?
It was cool. I actually had a little amateur record. I had 8 amateur fights before I turned pro, so I already had gained a good bit of experience. And I fought in like some decent shows for an amateur to fight in. My very first show was at the Baton Rouge River Center, and it was almost like a UFC show. I
Yeah.
mean, the event was almost sold out, and the River Center is pretty big. You don't see a lot of local shows sell out an event center like the River Center.
Yeah.
But it was like it was something to do with like an LSU football game the night before or the night after. So a lot of people was down there for that, and they kind of joined it with called it like Tiger tailgating for all the fans that were down there. Tailgating was all at the fights before the LSU game that day or the next day. So I gained a lot of experience on over the course of being an amateur. So when I made my pro debut, I actually fought a brown belt. I think I was a blue belt at the time,
Yeah.
and just not a lot of nerves. I felt like I was already there and had the experience, and I actually wind up winning my pro debut in like 30 seconds
Yeah.
over a brown belt by submission. So it was a pretty good feeling.
When it hit you that you were good at this, that you can do this?
You know, um, After my fourth amateur fight, my coach looked at me and said, can't wait to see it in UFC one day. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know, really. I never even thought about going to the UFC. At that time when you're an
Yeah.
amateur, everybody wants to fight in the UFC, but that's still such a distant dream. And you don't even know if it's possible yet. At this time, they had a few guys around, like uh, Tim Crater might have already been in the UFC
Yeah.
or was on the fighter show. So there was some guys like that. So I was like, it's possible, but at the same time, you don't.
Yeah.
And as I started winning, I was like, maybe I can. Maybe I am good enough to make it to somewhere like the UFC.
Did you ever talk or train with Tim?
Oh yeah. Tim's a good friend of mine. I've ever since I want to say we did some cross training. I went down and did some sparring with Dustin Poirier back in my younger pro days, when he first made it to the UFC. And Tim's super cool guy. Um, and we always communicate back and forth. I always see Tim in local shows. He runs his own show down here, and any chance I get to put some of my fighters on this show, I'll do it.
Yeah, he has this other younger guy, huge. I like this guy a lot. AJ Fletcher. He's been on the
Yep.
show a couple of times. He's a great guy.
Yep.
You ever talk with him?
I don't know if I've ever really talked with AJ. One of my guys, Dennis Hughes, fought AJ at amateur, and it
Yeah.
was like probably one of the best fights you would see as amateurs. And both actually went on to be pretty successful pro.
Yeah.
Of course, AJ Fletcher in the UFC, DJs went on
Yeah.
to like Eagle, and he fought Eagle a couple of times, and his brothers in Bellator. So they're doing good things too.
Yeah, they're definitely killing it out there. Now, for you, Kurt, obviously, you were talking about something that you've done. But before then, you got to the UFC, right? You got the call. believe you're with Strike Force, right?
Yep.
Yep. Then you
So
Strike Force, then you went with the UFC, correct?
yep. So how that all worked out is I was under another management than I am currently, and they signed me when I was about 7-0, and it was like, look, man, you got a perfect record to get into the UFC. Just you play this game smart with us, we'll get you to the UFC. You just listen, do what we say. I'm like, all right, cool. So I think I had 2 more local fights. Wound up winning both, so I was undefeated at 9-0, and my manager called me and he was like, hey, got a good opportunity for you. So this is the last Strike Force, and the UFC's purchasing Strike Force. And he said, I got a fight offer for you. It's like, it's not an easy one, but it's the Strike Force #1 contender, Pat Healy. He's like, you step up, you take this fight, you have a good showing. I think the UFC will bring you over. So I'm like, I'm in, I fought Pat to a tough decision loss, but still had a good showing. And Sean Shelby come to the back and invited me to the UFC.
How did that feel?
It was cool, and at the same time, whenever Sean Shelby came to the back, I had just lost my first fight ever. So I didn't even know what losing in an MMA fight felt like at the time. So, I was kind of, I was down, I guess you could say. And then Sean Shelby come to the back and asked me how would I like to come to the UFC. And I'm like, damn. So even off of this loss, I'm still about to go to the UFC. So it was good.
Now, obviously the results didn't go your way when it came down to like the first UFC fight, man. How did you handle that? How does it feel like, because your job is very unique in the sense where you have a bad day, man, people are watching it. I have a bad day, people don't know about it. How was that difficult to manage? Was it difficult?
It was difficult, but I think the reason why it was so difficult because I was so young. I was young. Like I said, I had a little bit of experience, but I've never fought. I never even been to a UFC fight before.
Yeah.
Much less fighting in one. I've never been to that level of a show, and to jump right into it and fight somebody that I've been watching forever, like Pat Healy, a guy who was supposed to fight Gilbert Melendez for the Strike Force lightweight title. And then not win that fight, and you can clearly see in the fight, Pat Healy's a great fighter, but he didn't like beat me. I beat
Yeah.
myself by a lot of mistakes, and it's the same thing. Once I went to the UFC, I thought that I was ready and fought Steven Siler, and that was still another fight that I felt like I should have won. Steven Siler didn't do anything to really beat me. I felt like I made critical mistakes and beat myself. So it was kind of hard for a while, but I felt like I gained a lot of experience, learned a lot, and everything happens for a reason.
Yeah. Now, fast forward, you went on a streak. You started you got back in the win column. Then you went contender series, right? Believe it. I don't know if it
Yep.
was the inaugural one out there, but you were there for a season of the contender series. You main evented it on there. You had won the fight. Then some stuff happened when it came to that department, but you got into the UFC, right?
Yep. So
Okay.
yeah, I started management company, Sucker Punch Entertainment, Brian Butler, Brian Hamper, Chris
Shout
Creech,
out to
those guys.
them.
Yeah, yeah. So and since day one of signing with them, they almost got me back to the UFC. Like the first month I was signed with the Titan FC at the time, and
Yeah.
I was fighting for Titan. Um, and when I signed with them, I actually had came off of 2 other losses. I lost to Andre Harrison, and then I flew to Russia and I fought another guy in Russia, top Russian guy, Frodo Kaspalayev, and I lost to him as well. So I was kind of on a down slump again, man. I lost 2 fights, and this was after winning the Titan FC featherweight championship.
Yeah.
And I signed with them, needed a little bit of a change, went back to lightweight and got on a little streak, got some wins behind me, and they got me a shot at the contender series, and it was the very first contender series. So
Yeah. It
that
was
was
another one. Yeah.
I got the headline the very first contender series against
That's
Matt
cool.
Bassett, won, pulling out the win, getting a contract, going back to the UFC. Um, so yeah, like I said, everything happened for a reason. I took those early losses to set up what happened next.
Now, when it came down to the UFC, right? You got back and there didn't go your way. How do you process that, Kurt?
So I know I fought tough guys. I felt like
Yeah.
I've never been handed like a handout or a gimme fight ever in the UFC. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying gimme fights. And anybody in the UFC, they're there
They're all
for a reason.
tough. Yeah.
Still, at different levels. There's still ranked guys and there's unranked guys, Um, and I feel like, when I got back to the UFC, the first guy I fought was Ione Barcelos. I think he was like a RFA champion, but
Yeah.
very good guy, trained in Brazil. I think trained with Jose Aldo and some of those guys. And man, it was a good fight. I had a longer layoff than what I would have wanted to before that fight, but was still 100% confident. Had the experience now. It's just the fight didn't go my way. It got caught in the third round.
Damn.
He won by TKO. And that was that. I just doesn't matter what happened. Every time a loss happens, I just try to learn from it.
Yeah, no, no, for sure. I mean, so you fought three other guys. You had fought Shane Burgos in there, right?
Yep. Shane Burgos, another guy. Look at what he's done in the UFC before, after. Look,
Yeah,
look at some of the injuries he has. Look at some of the guys he fought. And now, signed with PFL, doing big things over there at PFL, making a lot of money, which is good for those guys. But still, another guy that went, I want to say, top 10 or definitely top 15 after I fought him. And then right after
yeah,
him, I fought Thiago Moises, another guy that was just, you know, main
savage.
against freaking Makachev. So, all these guys that I fight still always turn out to be very good, get ranked, do something very good in the sport, and they're still active. They're still doing very well. So, I don't hold my head on any of that. Like I always say, everything happens for a reason. And all of those reasons have put me to where I'm at today.
Kurt, what got you through that though? I mean, at the end of the day, you got into the UFC twice, right? It didn't go your way, man. It takes a special human to be able to continue to pull through. Is there anything you can tell people, or like what got you through it, or was it really? It's not as hard as I'm maybe making it seem to be here.
Well, I mean, it's definitely hard, because you go to think like, man, well, if I just win one of these fights, where does that put me?
Yeah,
When I dropped Shane Burgos at Madison Square Garden, one of the biggest pay per views of the year, and I can't capitalize on it. I'm like, man, just a little, I change a little bit of detail, or I don't make that one mistake, then I get this win over Shane Burgos at Madison Square Garden. Where would that have put me in
yeah,
the UFC? Who could have been next for me? But I lost and I dropped a three, got released again, and then shit's running through your head. It's like, man, maybe I just can't do it at that level. Maybe I just can't win those fights. Um, but then again, you go back to the drawing board and you say, hey man, I'm just gonna keep going no matter what's next, whether it's back to the UFC, whether it's Bellator, whether it's PFL, whether it's another organization out there that wants to sign you. Um, you just got to keep pushing, man. Keep pushing, keep training, keep moving forward.
absolutely. Now, fast forward. You've won two fights in a row. Ultimate Fighter comes out, right? Ladies and gentlemen, Kurt will be on the Ultimate Fighter season 31. Big one, right? Because for the obvious reasons, right? McGregor, Chandler. For you, man, how did this opportunity come to be for you? Is this something that you even thought was a possibility for you?
Yeah, so I never thought this would be possible. So, and here's the thing, getting released from the UFC the first time, most of the time, I mean, I don't know what there's percentages, but the guy never makes it back.
Yeah,
I was able to go make it to the UFC. I get released, work my way back, get signed for a second time. After a second time, it's almost guaranteed that you will never go back to the UFC, you know? And then, I go off and I fight, sign for another organization, win some fights, get back on a winning streak. But even the UFC is not even in my mind. I'm like, I'll never go back to the UFC. I just wasn't even thinking about it. I'm thinking about trying to get to Bellator or PFL, and I'm trying to find fights. I signed with Eagle for Khabib, and just it never happens. And fight offers are coming my way, and I'm accepting all these fights, and they're getting turned down, or they're just not happening. And I'm going on like almost 2 years of not fighting, and I'm like,
yeah.
man, I may never even fight again, much less definitely make it back to the UFC. And here comes Sucker Punch, hit me up. Chris Creech texted me one day and said, "Hey, send me an email. I just sent you the Ultimate Fighter Season 31 application. Fill it out, send it back. Got an interview for you tomorrow." And I'm like, "Okay."
Did you know who the coaches were at this time?
No, didn't know anything about coaches. Didn't know anything. And
Yeah,
at the time, shit, man, I'm like, I don't even know how this is going to work. Do I want to do this?
Yeah.
Do this? You know, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, man, 6 weeks, everybody talks about how awful the Ultimate Fighter is. You know, I got 5 kids, I have a wife, I got 2 gyms that I'm running.
Yeah, I was gonna say, bro, you're a business
So
owner.
all of that's running through my head. And I'm like, I don't know if, first off, if I can do it. I don't know if I want to do it, but should I do it? And then my wife, my son, my teammates are like, you better do that shit. Like, what? Why would you pass it up? They're like, don't worry about this. I mean, we'll come together. We'll make all this happen. We'll handle the gym. My wife's,
Hey, man, shout out to the team and your wife,
yeah,
man.
you know, my wife's like, man, I handle the kids. You know, this is a good opportunity. Why not? And I'm like, you know what? All right, I'm in. You know, then I have another teammate. You know, he texts me. He's like, look, man, before you even shut anything down, see where it goes. And I'm like, all right, so man, let's do it. And, you know, fill out everything, have the interview, um, and boom, there
Was
we
it a
go.
quick like a 10-minute interview? Or was it something that was
Yeah,
like an hour,
it,
bro?
no, it was like a 10-minute interview with some of the producers. You know, just like we're doing here. I think it was a Skype or Zoom,
Yeah.
and they just want to talk to you. They want to see your personalities. They want to see, you know, what you're like, what you're gonna bring to the show. So, and even after that, I'm like, damn, did that go good? And I'm
Yeah.
like, man, you know, I text Brian, calls me, and he's like, how'd it go? I'm like, well, I think it went well. I mean, it seemed like it went well. So he's like, all right, well, they'll hit me back and we'll know something here soon. I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm like,
What
damn,
was it a
man.
quick process?
Yeah, that interview that was a quick process. And then, you know, from there, they kind of left us out for about 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh shit.
And
Okay.
I got a text from my manager, Brian, and he was like, you're in. I'm like, oh shit. And like me and my wife were driving, she starts crying and stuff. And I'm like, this is really happening. All right. Well, and he's like, pack your bags because you're probably leaving Saturday. And it was probably Thursday. So I didn't only had like 2 days.
No knowledge of coaches yet.
No knowledge of coaches at the moment.
So when you did get the news,
Yep.
so what was your reaction, bro? Conor McGregor, Michael
Like
Chandler.
I felt like I just signed a fight back to the UFC. And then, you know, I was going to have Michael Chandler or Conor McGregor in my corner. So I'm like, you know, this is actually going to be cool. This actually makes it better. You know, not that, you know, it would be any different, but I did like the coach selection, of course, with what Connor brings, what Chandler brings. Look at the type of ratings that Connor's going to bring. Look
Yeah.
at the type of fighter in person and the ratings that Chandler brings. So, you know, of course, when you hear Conor McGregor, Michael Chandler's going to be on the show, you know, you're already expecting fireworks.
Now there was an issue, right, that was brought up about certain people getting removed after doing their interviews. And were you ever nervous about that, or was it something that you heard, but it already boom, it already happened. It already happened. Like you're like you didn't get a chance to be nervous.
No, you was nervous because you know the numbers wasn't quite adding up, right? So when we go to Vegas, you know, before even the process of the Ultimate Fighter and all this stuff, you know, you're not even really allowed to see or talk to any of the other fighters. But you're walking through the hotel and you can't just freely roam out your room. You know,
No, you can't.
they,
Okay.
they want you in your room. You want to leave the room, you got to call them, ask them. They'll tell you come on down if you want to hit the workout room, but it's got to be certain times. You can't be with so many other fighters. If you want to go for a jog, you can go for a jog, but you got to call them and tell them. You don't even have your room key. They take it. So it's not like you can just
Damn,
come in.
bro. Holy crap. It's like you're a kid somewhere.
So I mean, you're kind of on a house arrest, and but you see guys, you know, and I'm walking around, I'm seeing, okay, well, I know that guy, I know that guy, I know that guy. Oh, he's a 35er. He's not my division. So you start adding guys up, and you're like, well, 16 going to the house is going to be 8 one weight class, 8 the other weight
Yeah.
class. That's 16 fighters. I just counted 20. I'm like, what's going on here? So somebody's going home, and they're not telling you nothing.
Did you
And
ask? I mean, it's a silly question, but do you
all
even ask?
I'm gonna ask, I wasn't gonna be the person like asking, hey man,
Yeah, no shit.
or am I on this damn show?
Because they already told you, right? You flew out there, they told you you're in.
Yeah. But he did say, as soon as they pick you up from the airport, they straight up said there are replacements here. There are backups here. Um, so, but before you go out and do something stupid, think about that. I'm like, all right, well, so they didn't actually say they said you're in, but they didn't actually say, hey, you're in,
Yeah, fair
right?
enough.
And there were some guys there. I heard that some guys knew they were alternates, some guys didn't. So I'm like, shit, man. Well, I hope I'm not an alternate. I would hate to fly all the way out here, stay in a hotel for 10 days and then not even be able to go to the show.
Yeah,
So, uh, so yeah, we're out here in Vegas. There's more than 16 fighters.
you know that for sure. Like, okay, it's gonna happen.
Yep.
And then I'm sure, did the news break before you went to record, or
Nope. Not really. It's just
that's wild, man.
when they loaded you up in the van, you're like, all right, let me see who's missing. Okay, this guy is missing. I remember seeing him. This guy's missing. And then, guys get to talking and they're like, yeah, well, he
So and
was
so
pissed
isn't here. Yeah,
at home. I'm like, well, damn.
that's wild. Oh man, shit. I
But,
mean, in a sense,
but
it's you're watching your journey too. You know what I mean, bro?
right. Yeah. So at that type of sense, and like I even talking with my wife, I'm like, I don't know if this is a sure thing. I might be coming back home.
So during
And
the hotel process, you can still talk to your family, right? You haven't started the actual
uh,
filming yet.
we did wind up taking our phones, but you got your phones for the first couple of days. So, and I heard in the past seasons, like you didn't even get your phones in a hotel, which would have probably been absolutely miserable.
Yeah.
But we still had it for the first couple of days. But once they'll call you, they'll be like, hey, taking your phone tomorrow, 3 o'clock, talk to your family, make that one last phone call before we come up. We'll let you know when we're coming up. They come up with a bag, take all your stuff, take your phone, and you head out.
Straight business, man. Just straight
Yep.
straight business. Wild, wild, wild. So Kurt, obviously I know you can't talk too much. It'll debut next week, the show. It'll be awesome. Uh did you become a better fighter from going through the show? Did this, because you're over a 10-year vet in the game. Did you learn something different about yourselves that maybe you didn't know about yourself after this whole experience?
Oh, 100%, man. 100%. Um, this was probably one of the best opportunities that I've ever had in my life, one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life, just to be able to go and do something like that and meet all of these great people that I was able to meet and train with all the great guys that I was able to train with was really a blessing and one of the best experiences of my life.
Now, for you, if you could sum up your experience in one word: wild, crazy, chaotic. I mean, how would you describe it?
Oh man, chaotic's pretty good, but I would say incredible.
Incredible. Okay, chaotic's a close second.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, Kurt, man, thank you so much, man. What can the fans expect, from when they watch this show, man? I mean, is it edgy your seat kind of stuff?
A lot of it's going to be the edge of your seat kind of stuff. The fights were great. You see a lot of past seasons. Dana White's got to come to the house and get at the guys for not putting on fights. No, they didn't have to do that for these. You had a bunch of hungry guys trying to make it to the UFC. You had a bunch of hungry guys trying to get back to the UFC. Um, you know, guys seeing what levels they're at. So all the fights were really incredible. Really good fights. I don't think that there was many just complete blowouts. So really entertaining fights, really good fights from each side, and incredible show.
That's awesome, man. I can't wait to see it. That's airing on Tuesdays on ESPN Plus. Kurt, thank you so much, man, for taking the time, man. We'll be excited to be able to watch you on the show, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Is there anything you want to let the audience know before we sign off here?
Man, just tune in May 30th, Tuesday nights, Ultimate Fighter season 31. Get your popcorn ready and enjoy. It's gonna be some good fights. Thanks to everybody that helped out get me ready for the show. Thank you to my sponsor that's gonna be sponsoring me for the show, Covington Power Sports. Thank you to everybody that helped out.
Hey, shout out to Kurt and to everyone out there listening. Thanks for listening, guys. I'll catch you later, guys. Goodbye.